Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, we sit down with Kevin Lee. Kevin is an incredibly talented magician. Not only has he created a ton of magic, but he also makes loads of magic for social media, getting millions of views, and he's been on Penn and Teller's Fool Us twice, including fooling them once. And I've even had a chance to work with Kevin in scaling his business, and this guy is a machine. So in this episode, we unpack how he does it, and more importantly, how you can do it too, how you can be creative, how you can get TV spots, how you can come up with magic for social media, and how you can be original. This was an amazing episode, and I think you're going to love it as much as I did. Here it is, a wonderful conversation with the one and only Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jonah. Thank you for having me.
I am very excited to have you here. It's been super fun. We've had a chance to work together over the past year, which has been super fun. And it's just great to watch the amazing stuff that you share online. You're really one of the, there's only so many magicians that are really putting out epic social media content online. And it's really cool to see, awesome stuff going out. So we're going to dive into that this week. I'm just real happy to have you here. Let's get started all the way in the way back. How did you even get started in magic?
I got into magic, pretty cliche story. I was on a trip with my parents in China. I was born here in Southern California, but I was around 8 years old. I went on a trip to Hangzhou, China, and my grandpa, he had like this push cart around his home. It's like a pretty touristy spot that sold puzzles and magic tricks. And he just picked up the vanishing handkerchief trick, which I'm sure most of us have learned as our first couple tricks. He performed that to me in person, and that was my first time seeing magic in person. So the whole vanishing, showing your hands empty without sleeves, that just truly made me believe in the magic in person. Like, I've seen it on TV before, but seeing it in person, magic is always that unique experience you have to see live. And that's what also made me so passionate about it, because since that moment, I went back here home from that trip, and I taught myself about magic.
How old were you then?
I was 8, so that's when I just learned my first trick through my grandpa. And that was my last time seeing my grandpa, because he unfortunately passed away after that.
Sorry to hear that.
No worries. Who would have known though? Like, this whole thing would have led to something just being my full-time career.
Yeah, the entire thing. Let's talk a little bit about that. You decided that you come back and you're like, I want to do more magic. What does that look like for you? Are you with other magicians? Are you just on YouTube? Are you just on, what did that actually look like for you?
I went to my local library and picked up anything I can find about magic. And if anyone has ever done that, you'll find the cheesiest of magic books, like party tricks, pretty much. So that wasn't sufficient enough, but I did pick up a couple simple party tricks. And then, of course, YouTube became a bigger thing. Searching up tutorials, how to do easy card tricks became a thing. And I would teach myself different moves on these sleight of hand channels, like how to do a pass. Have I ever done a pass live? I maybe once or twice in my 8-year career right now, but it's just nice to understand foundations. Like, when you first start in magic, you should learn everything.
It's funny, we're gonna go full circle and talk about social media and magic, but it's pretty cool that a lot of us, like a lot of people, I say us because we're sort of in the same generation, we learned through Google and YouTube, and that's really where the bulk of the magic education came from. And it's interesting, you're talking about picking up some of these tricks and stuff on YouTube, and even if it's stuff that you never actually use, even if it never ended up being stuff you use, that's where your exposure to magic actually started. When did you start, I don't know, introducing yourself to stuff that you did use? Where did that, were you in a magic store? Were you hanging with other magicians, or what did that look like?
It was the Magic Castle. That was when I started learning a lot more from professionals directly. And it was my dad who told me about this program. Like, hey, there's kids that would be around your age, and you can just learn at this literally world famous venue. So my first time there, I was 16 years old. I was like a sophomore in high school, and I created my 5 minute act a couple days before the actual audition. Never been to the Magic Castle, so already I was like pretty nervous, also excited at the same time. But I just grabbed a double blank deck of cards. I wrote on it with Sharpie, created this whole storytelling deck, and that was it. I was grateful enough to pass through my first audition, and it was a trip.
Wow. You know, it's amazing that actually was the first spot for you, was going out to the Magic Castle. Some people spend their life hoping they'll visit the Magic Castle, you know. It's amazing that you got a chance to live there and dive in through that. Talk to me about actually getting serious about magic. Like, did you have to convince your parents this is something that you want to do? Like, how did that actually go down?
It's always been a serious hobby of mine on the side. So all the time in school, I would find opportunities to perform, whether it was at the annual holiday party with family or if it was just at school. And at school, I became known as the Magic Man. Like that's what everyone nicknamed me. And even students that didn't even know who I was, they're like, "Hey, we heard you do magic." So I would just practice when I wasn't even ready. I was actually thrown on the spot. So that also made me more passionate about it because I enjoyed doing that.
Talk to me about like taking it seriously as a career, or deciding to, like, what was that like? Did you have to, like, was it easy with your parents? When did you decide to do that? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, it was really the timing of my last year of college. So I went to business school at Cal Poly Pomona, and the whole time I never thought that college was for me. I didn't think I was capable of finishing because school was never like my thing. But I did my first TV appearance on Fool Us back in 2017. I auditioned 3, 4 times before that. I think that was season 4. And that was just, again, crazy to me that I get to perform for two of my biggest idols in magic. And seeing my parents in the crowd, that was, it really made me so emotional because I was, again, not only trying to prove to them that I can do something, but it was also proof to myself that this could be a potential career, right? Because I was always just performing in between classes, midterms, all of that. Any gig I can do, whether it was free or low paying gigs, I would take it just so I can just get that experience in. But my first time around on Fool Us, I wasn't able to fool them, which again, to me, I was still okay with that because even the executives on the show say the show may be called Fool Us, but even if you don't fool them, it doesn't mean you're terrible. It's a showcase of variety of magicians from around the world. And that was enough to get my confidence going, whether or not I should really take this seriously. And then I came about my second time auditioning. So here's where it got a little strange because I was working on this routine where I can teach anyone any language instantly in a matter of seconds with no setup prior. Everything's done live on the spot. And I was working on that routine at the Magic Castle. So again, the Magic Castle has always been like a professional playground where I can just test out material for real world people. So I sent in a tape, but at around that same time I sent in the audition tape, I remember going to this restaurant in LA and I was like about to pull up on the metered parking. This guy was about to leave and he waves at me. He's like, "Hey, you can take my spot." But then he stared at me like 2 seconds too long. And I'm like, why did he stare at me like a little longer? So then I didn't think much of it, but we took the spot. As I was eating, I was like, shit, this is the executive of Fool Us. Like, I think I met him once on the set. Like, he wasn't always on set, but he was there for a little bit. And I swear it's him, but I didn't think much of it. I just left it as that. So when I finally heard back from the audition and they're like, "Hey, you can actually do this without any setup," I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, great. We're interested in having you back. Let's hop on a call to discuss." We did that. And then because there's two executives, one of them was like, "Hey, Kevin, were you at this restaurant a couple months ago?" I'm like, "Holy shit!" Like, yeah, it was me. He's like, I remember seeing your face." So it was such an odd coincidence. And from that audition and that call, they're like, "We'd love to have you back." And I was able to fool Penn and Teller on my second time around, which again, super grateful for because people who normally don't fool them the first round, they never get the chance to go back. But I emailed them saying, "Hey, I want to represent a younger magician that could hopefully show off like how much growth can happen in a short amount of time. And I want this audition to be just that with an original idea and premise." So yeah, that was enough for them to believe in it.
And that was enough to catapult you into doing this full time. Like, was that the situation? Was those two TV spots was enough that you were able to tell your parents, like, like, hey, look at this, like, or was the plan the whole time while you were in business school to end up using the business to do magic? Like, how did you end up taking this seriously?
Everything was in limbo. Again, everything came down to timing. So this happened where I flew Penn and Teller in March of 2019. My graduation was May 2019. So it was literally a month to barely 2 months apart. And I had to make that big decision whether or not I was going to jump into this full time. And having conversations about careers with my parents always led to an argument. Like, are you sure you want to take this seriously? Like, come on, you can, have that degree underneath your belt. You can do magic on the side while you have a full time, stable, quote unquote, job. And I said, hey, how about this? I think that this fool-us appearance, fooling them, was further proof that I can do something in this industry. So give me a year minimum and maximum for me to show you that I could potentially do something in this industry. And let's let the income speak for itself. If I can support myself with magic full time, then I think that's proof to you, direct proof. And if not, then I still have that degree underneath my belt and I can go anywhere. So really, I'm not asking for much already, because 1 year isn't enough most of the time for any career, right? It's like anything good takes a very, very long time. So I also had a conversation maybe 3 months into doing this full time, right after graduation. And again, all these conversations led to an argument with my parents. But this conversation I'll never forget. My dad was like, hey, do you know, like, the average magician makes about this much a year? And I'm like, and he's like, how have you been doing? And I said, well, I don't believe I'm your average magician, and I've already passed this amount in just 3 months. So I think that I should just continue going on. And this isn't to brag about how much income I was making or whatnot. This is just the confidence that I had in myself to pull all of this off to show my parents. And even I told myself, even at the end of the day, if I wasn't able to convince my parents, I'm going to just continue pushing so I can convince myself. That'll eventually convince my parents down the line. Because I took this so seriously. Like, I'm like, I don't picture myself doing anything but magic. So I had to make this work.
I had a very similar moment with my parents where I said, give me a year. I had a very similar moment to that where I said, give me a year, because I also had, I studied math. Right. So it was like, there's definitely a track to do something else. So I surely resonate with that. And I didn't have two foolish appearances to be like, look, look at that. But anyways, it's a really incredible story. And I think, the reason I'm prying a bit on that question is because I think that there's a lot of magicians that are in that spot, maybe even in that spot right now where, like, when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, like, there's just weird, sometimes there's magic opportunities, sometimes there isn't. Like, there's no way to know if you can, like, do this full time. You have to actually just, like, commit to doing it, and projects like Fool Us or, other TV projects or social media or things like that. You just have to say, like, if I'm going to do this, then I have to, submit to these shows. I have to, go and I have to put out videos, whatever the thing is you're doing, send emails. Like, you just have to, like, start. You have to do it.
Exactly. You have to be a walking marketer, essentially, in a natural way. And you have to tell everyone what you do, because you never know when your next show is going to be. I think that's always a fear for most artists in general. It's like, you never know when work is going to come next. So as every single day passes, find a way to just spread the word and market yourself more, so that you're never left thinking, oh, I should have done that more.
So let's talk about spreading the word and marketing yourself more. One thing that you do incredibly well is social media magic, and it is its own thing. It's just its own complete thing. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently. And one way that I've been sorting this out in my mind that's made me feel really good about thinking about different types of magic is just saying, like, there's a bunch of different stages. There is stage magic. There's mingling magic. There's virtual magic. There is social media magic. And all of these different things, and each of them have their own unique properties, right? Each of them have certain things that you should do to make it right. And literally, if you tried to do something social media and put it on a stage, it's bonkers. And the opposite is too true. If you try to take a trick from the stage and put it on social media, it's very, very, very difficult. So for somebody who is thinking about putting out content, they don't know what to do. All of your videos are tens, 20s, 50s, thousands of views, if not more, hundreds of thousands. They're really quite incredible. What's the secret? What is the secret to social media magic? It's different than stage and close up and social media. What's the secret?
The secret is simply being original. I think it's so easy for anyone to be a carbon copy of like a TikTok social media magician, and everyone just does like the same style, like, hey, rate my magic, or hey, I'm gonna watch this, boom, and you're next to like another person. But how I started social media magic was simply experimenting with different ideas. I was doing this maybe 2 years, just not at a consistent rate when I was in school, but just here and there, because it was my creative outlet. And eventually it led me hitting sort of my streak of my style of videos that were unique to me. And what that was sleight of hand cheating magic. So I would use sleight of hand to cheat on a test. Like, of course it was a skit at my school. I would film it at my college with my friends on our breaks. So that became a thing. And that's when I went from 0 views to 4 million views in like a week organically on Instagram. And my technique was also at this time, because again, social media always shifts, but at that time, memes were so prevalent in the way that it looked. It was like a square shaped box, or like a Snapchat banner, when you blah, 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 or like it's what happens when blah, blah, blah. So you have the text, you have that video inside a white box. So it looks like a meme. And I was gaining my audience through making my magic videos look like memes. And this sleight of hand video was just like, when you use sleight of hand to cheat on a test. And that garnered 4 million views in a week. So that was like, oh shoot, like maybe I should do more videos like this. And that gave me also more confidence to experiment with other kinds of videos. But going back to your original question, like originality is the biggest thing. Like take what you think is working with other magicians or other people that you find outside of industry, right? That's the second thing. Look outside of your industry. Go follow other meme pages. Go follow other viral pages, or it doesn't have to be viral pages, but a page that you really stay on the same wavelength as, and then grab bits and pieces. Steal like an artist.
I was just thinking about that. While you were saying that, I was just thinking about that book, because it's so exactly right. And I think that like, there's so much I have to say about what you just said. There's so many ideas. The first is that book, Steal Like an Artist. Like, just take other people's ideas and add your thing to it. And what you just said there, which is so right, is like, don't fish in the magic pool for ideas. Like duh, because then you end up with the same things as other magicians. Fish in every other pool for ideas, and then all the magicians look at you and everybody sees it with magic. And they're like, we've never seen anything like this before, because they've never seen anything like that before. So that's the first piece. The other thing, there's 2 things that you said that really, really resonate. And I'm going to leave the most important one for last, because it's something that I really want to talk about. But the first is that you talked about being contextual with the times. You said like at the time it was really about memes, and that you had to really think about, okay, I want to make it look like it's a meme, maybe make it look like almost that it was uploaded by a secondary person, like all these different things that you're trying to do to make it fit with the times. How does that stuff change? How is someone supposed to keep up? I'll give you an example for me personally, and then I'd love to hear you talk about this. But, I tried to build with my team, I've got a graphics and video guy who does amazing work. And I tried to build these like videos, kind of like what you were talking about, with like a black bar on top and on the bottom, there's some words on it. And I tried to build these videos, and, it took a while, because especially working at a team, so there's a lot of miscommunication. There's a lot of this. I'm going to change this, change that. By the time we produced the dozen videos to start getting them out, that it was like out of style. It was like weird, because first it was popular for 6 months, and then I was like, oh, I should do this. And I, waited for 2 months. And then by the time I did, it was like a year later, by the time this whole thing came out, and that style was gone, that was gone. So sometimes it's really disheartening to try to keep up with the times. How do you do it now? Like how are you changing? How do you think about keeping your stuff really current or mirroring what's going on currently? Like there's kind of like an art to that.
Here's the easiest way to make your videos up to date without going through what you just said. It's simply using a trending song. And you have to be careful of how you use trending music, because sometimes if it's like too trendy, everyone's going to hear that first song playing and they're like, oh, I'm sick of this, click out. So you have to time it just right. But that is the easiest way, simply going on TikTok. And here's the thing, to be like someone who puts out a lot of content, you have to consume a good amount of content. I don't think there's another way, because how else will you understand what's trending and whatnot if you don't know what's trending or whatnot? So you have to consume yourself, spend time every day. And I think it's also a fun thing. It's not like, oh man, I have to like watch a lot of videos now, and see what is actually a song that's sticking around. Like simply going on TikTok on your For You page, scrolling through 20 videos. If you hear the same song play like 2-3 times in those 20 videos, save the damn audio and use it. Literally just use it.
You know, there's so many nuggets that you just gave there. And the one that I really want to highlight to just show the extent of understanding this stuff and learning this stuff is you said, like, if in the first 2 seconds, like, you know, like, and just the thought that like you have to be able to consume this content enough to understand how people are feeling. Because on TikTok, for example, it's about, does the first half a second buy you 4 seconds, buy you 7, buy you the whole, buy you 30, buy you 2? And like, it's just really incredible that you have to consume this stuff to be able to make these micro decisions about, I need the first half second to be entertaining. I need the thumbnail to be exciting. I need, like, we learn all of these bits by consuming the content.
Yeah. I'll give you a recent example. I spent an hour and a half straight, no breaks, filming the same video over and over again. I added in a trending sound and the video did pretty well, but it was just standing there and then again filming the same thing over and over again to the point where I can make it shorter. Like, it was at 30 seconds, and a 30-second video in your head, you might feel like, oh, that's already pretty quick. No, my other advice would be make it as short as possible. Get to the damn point. I think a lot of magicians, they're so used to in-person performances. And again, like at the start of this conversation, you said this is its own thing. It's its own beast. You can't compare it to anything else. So don't compare it to anything else. Understand that within the first 2-3 seconds, you have to hook them. So if you don't hook them in the 3 seconds, it's already game over. But if you do, the next 3-4 seconds, you have to hook them a little longer. So as every second ticks by, you have to have something interesting, whether it's text on the screen, what you're saying, the music, or the actual trick itself. You have to make it so interesting and have the video at the right length where they'll watch the whole thing. And maybe here's another technique. Maybe it's about making it as short as possible, right? But long enough where they're like, oh, I kind of understood that, but wait, it was too short. Let me watch it again. Let me watch it again and again and again. And the same person will now be 5 views. And that adds up to a crap ton of views because the same people are watching your video over and over again. So again, like filming that video, I think it was like 70 takes continuously, nonstop, just so I can get it down to the right length of doing the same thing.
That's such a good piece of advice, which is just like, make it shorter. Make it shorter. Like, the win is that somebody watched the full video. Like, it's kind of interesting to think about that like, if you can get if you can get 1 billion people to watch a 5-second video, like, that's great. Like, you crushed it, you know, like, you know, you don't have to drone it on for 30 seconds if there's only 5 seconds worth of material, because if 5 incredible seconds of material, I know this sounds crazy to somebody who does magic on stage, is listening to this and they're going like, what are you talking about? 5 seconds or 12 incredible seconds of material. They're like, what are you talking about? But it really is true, is like, how short can you make it while still keeping it, you know, making sense and keeping it relevant? There's another tip I heard about these videos, which sort of relates to what you said, is you mentioned, you know, whether it's what you're saying or what's going on the screen or you know, what's text coming up. The thing I learned is you need to have more than one of those happening at once. You know, like, you can't even just have like just text on, like, you need a video and text, or you need you talking and something interesting happening, or you need like you need multiple things going on at once, and they're each their own little project, their own little masterpiece, you know?
I think it's a case by case basis. What you're saying is true sometimes, but other times, like, less is more. in many ways. Like simply by just not saying anything, having music play, and then one caption that pops up that says maybe wait for it, dot, dot, dot. That's all you need. That's really all you need. But we're also saying applies because sometimes if it is like a more complicated idea, you're like narrating, like you put that TikTok narration, the speech to audio thing, and then you have music, you have text, that also helps. So again, I can't say like one piece fits all, like that's going to apply every single time. That'll be more successful than having less because again, it's case by case. So this is all coming down to experimenting and being original. So try out everything. Don't be afraid to try out everything. Hey, I've had like every creator is going to have a video that you're like, I put so much work into this and it completely flops. That's okay because most of the time, like you can never predict how well a video is going to do. You can only do your best.
You know, there's one other thing I wanted to share about this because we're talking about this like micro analysis of your video and keeping it interesting that I want to talk about. And that is, you know, it was like lying in bed, I was watching this viral video of like epic fails or something, right? So people were just like falling in the water or running into walls or something stupid. And later that day, my roommate was watching the same video. And I didn't make it to the end of the video. I only watched like maybe 40 seconds or something out of the 2-minute video. And I saw him, he was sitting on the couch watching the video, and I started watching him watch the video. And the most incredible thing happened. At the same spot at 40 seconds, he also quit. And it blew my mind because I thought, well, if you multiply this by 1 million people, then it's not unreasonable to think that there is an actual lull in this video that is strong enough that is willing people to go, I've seen enough fails, I'm gone. Or, this isn't for me, I'm gone. And sometimes it takes, first of all, you consuming content to do that, which is what you said. But the other is like, watch your video and feel the lull. It's the same as the thing I want to compare it to is if you do any like timing forces with cards, you go, hey, say stop. Mm-hmm. And then they go, stop. And you know exactly when they're going to say stop. It's about 7 cards. It's literally called a 7-card force because you know, like, you're going to feel it. Here, say stop. Stop. And then you just want it, right? The urge, just like you have it. It's the same thing when you're watching a video. The urge comes over you, and you're like, "I'm not interested anymore." You know, it's interesting to try to protect against that stuff to keep people watching the whole video.
So for that, I would say ask more of your friends and just tell them straight up, like, don't bullshit me. Tell me the truth. Like, would you continue watching this? Which part of this video bores you? So you can pinpoint exactly. And at least another mind is just better than yours.
The second part of this that I wanted to ask you about social media magic is creativity. You know, even in just talking about the magic so far on your journey, like you've created a lot of magic. You make a lot of magic. I mean, for Fool Us, you made a lot of magic. Like a lot of stuff like on the fly. I mean, a lot of stuff. You have an incredible ability to do that. And I think at least social media gets you doing it often and often and often. Talk about what kind of advice do you have for somebody who wants to learn magic, and specifically somebody like you or I who has had a peculiar experience in being educated in magic, right? It's not like you have like 10,000 books. It's not like you learn through your way. Like you learn through just learning, going on YouTube, maybe downloading, maybe buying stuff, maybe like just like random stuff. What do you recommend to somebody like that who's like, hey, I want to create stuff, but I tried, it's all stupid, you know, like.
So let's take this back to our earlier conversation about like me learning magic on YouTube, because I would literally type in how to make Raven gimmick, how to make these gimmicks so that I don't have to spend 70, 60 bucks on these gimmicks. Like I was a kid, I didn't have that much money. I didn't know how to buy it. I didn't have a credit card. My parents wouldn't let me. So let me make this makeshift toy, essentially. And they would have a lot of these videos online at that time. And I would literally just get myself rubber bands, glue, tape, whatever, and just make this thing. I would show my cousins. I'd be so proud of it. Feel like I'm a fucking MacGyver. I'm like Batman making my own gadgets. And that was enough to, again, build up the confidence to push boundaries of what I can do. So I would say to anyone starting to create magic, because again, I'm not like the biggest creator in magic. Sometimes people, they don't think themselves as just a full-time performer, so they become consultants and just creators for other magicians. I would say for anybody in magic, just buy a lot of stuff. Like you just have to buy props. You just have to see the inner workings of it. Buy like if you're a close-up performer, go outside of your range. Buy like a DVD, an EMC DVD, if you will, about stage magic, stage illusions, and be like, oh shit, like that's how it works with stage magic. Because that's exactly what I did. Like I'm a close-up performer by heart, but I wanted to expand my mind to see how I could potentially create or take a stage trick and make it close up with the methods. Have a lot of stuff where you can just mess around with it. Like I would watch movies all the time. When I first started creating, have a bunch of decks, like poop decks, as I call it, scissors, glue, magnets, anything. And I would just start messing around and be like, let me see if I can recreate a gimmick. Let me see if I can now combine these two gimmicks together, or let me just make something weird and new. And if it works out, it works out. You're going to have a lot of bad ideas and just really, really terrible ideas that might not even make sense before you hit a single idea that's somewhat decent. So just be aware of that.
I want to come back to a couple of the stories that you mentioned. You know, you talked about in auditioning for the castle, and you talked about in Fool Us and whatever, you know, that you put these tricks together. And in looking at these tricks, I mean, obviously some of them resemble, like, you know, all magic is based on other magic. You know, they resemble these other things,
Absolutely.
but it's not like you went to audition for the castle and did like Chop Cup. You know, and put like, you know, it's not like when you went on Fool Us, you did, you know, like somebody picked a card and you found it, you know, like you did stuff that actually is a completely different, all of those examples are, you know, it's not you saying, okay, let me take a trick and add a joke or two jokes and then I'm happy with it. Or let me change the prop from a cup to a bowl and then I'll change this. And now it's kind of like my own. You didn't do that. You said, let him use a blank deck. Or what if I could make them to speak another language? Or what's going on there? Like what's going on that you're choosing to do a little bit more of that ground up, you know, building instead of, you know, maybe more of a shortcut with creativity, which is to take something and change, you know, some of the obvious stuff. What's going on there?
So if we take a look at my Fool Us auditions and the actual performances, my first round, I was doing a stage version of my own creation, Flight. So Flight was a project I released with Shin Lim. It was a Shin Lim presented product. At that time, I was like, oh my God, I've seen some of his work online. It's crazy. And he actually believed in the idea enough to want to like collaborate on it and sell it together. So that was my first product ever in the community. And how that came about was simply combining methods. What if a TNR could be combined with like a levitation, suspension / animation, where you take a corner of a card that's signed, rip it off, it levitates, leaving a gap in between the torn card and the corner. You can slowly start to see it move up, and then you restore it instantly, hand out the card. I sent that trailer to the Fool Us team, and they're like, oh, dope, like, do you have rights from Shin to use it? I was like, oh, no, this is like my trick. I created it. They're like, oh, like, that's awesome. Can you make this a stage version? And I'm thinking to myself, what? Like this close-up trick, I can't make this stage. But then I wasn't going to take no for an answer. They were going to take no for an answer. So I built it in the way where now I have this full story that tied around that trick itself. So that's how that came about. Literally combining different methods and then adding to that. For my second piece, it was all about my background. Like learning Chinese growing up, because I was born here in Southern California. Chinese wasn't my first language, but my parents would take me to Chinese school all the time. And for those of you who don't know how that works, it's like Saturday mornings. Like normally that's spent watching cartoons. I would love nothing more than just that. But I'm actually so glad that my parents did that for me, because now I have this ability to communicate with more people and expand my business. So having that said, I'm like, what if you can teach someone another language like Chinese, one of the most difficult languages in the world, instantly with flashcards? I also was inspired by the 100th Monkey Principle. That just came about because I wanted to do something that was very personal to my background. So these two examples can hopefully provide you more perspective how to create your own ideas and routines simply by combining methods and plots, and also looking at who you are as an individual, how you grew up, and applying that story to potential idea.
You know, thanks for unpacking that, because I think that a lot of these these tricks, even when I ask the question, I make it seem like it's like, oh, I just do this and that's how I come up with something different. But the answer is like, it's just bits and pieces that slowly come together. Okay, you finally come up with this trick. Okay. And then they said, we like it. Can you do it on stage? And so now you had to fill in this gap of stage. And, that's what ended up giving you this unique piece. And same thing for the other one. You had something that you wanted, and then you took the 100th Monkey Principle. Like, it's just little bits and pieces that come together, and just committing to doing it, I guess. Talk to me a little bit about those two Fool Us performances. I think that in them, you did a great job of talking about yourself, your heritage, your background in both of them. You did a really, really good job. And I think that it's something that in magic, like, it's very difficult to embed information about who you are and your life in your magic without it being clunky, without it being, a little bit strange. Cheesy, things like that. So I'd love to hear about, what kind of advice you have for magicians who, maybe not on the creative magic side, but on the writing side. Like, how do you decide how to put in, or how do you get info about you into your magic without it feeling clunky?
I need to give like full credit to my good friend Tristan at that time, and Ethan, my two friends that were into magic, but they didn't take it full time like myself. And both of them were so good at elaborating script writing and getting the idea to the point where it's very digestible. It's not just like magician talk where it doesn't seem too foreign. And I would say to that, if you don't have that as your strength, script writing or directing yourself, find another person that can aid in that. Because I think the best teams are teams that have their own strength individually and everyone comes together. So for that, I can't take full credit at all. Like, Tristan and Ethan helped me out through the process of that. We go back and forth on like, here's what I want to do with the magic. And they're like, all right, but you have to communicate it in a way through the audience where they can understand exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think that's the biggest question in magic, is sometimes, why are you doing that? And you can argue like, oh, because I'm a magician, I can just do it. But that is one of the most difficult questions to answer. And at least for me, I always want my magic to be relatable so that anyone watching, they can be like, I get it. I understand why that's happening. So find people that can help with that.
That's such great advice. The first is like, it's really nice to know that you're like, no, I didn't do it alone. I got help from people who are a little bit better. I think that that's really, really, really good advice. Just get other people to help you with the things that you're not good at. And in this case, you're like, okay, I'm really creative, but these are the things I want to say. I don't really know how to say it. And you get some people to help you doing that, which is really incredible. I've been 2 or 3 other things I want to chat about before we wrap this. The first is I want to talk about big views, or lots of, online views. I think that, you've had moments with Fool Us, with this first viral video, with, and I'm sure there's other examples as well where, someday more than others, because of a big appearance or because of a big viral video or whatever, you get a lot of views, you get a lot of followers, maybe you get a lot of inquiries. I'd love to hear about what that's like. And the reason I bring that up is, like, I think a lot of magicians who don't base their business off of events like that, it kind of looks pretty even. Their year or their, the inquiries and stuff kind of look pretty even. They don't get giant, okay, this week I had 500 inquiries, but last week I didn't have any, because this aired or something like that. Talk a little bit about, what that's been like and how you navigate that, or if it doesn't really directly translate into bookings or events, if it kind of just translates to more followers, more views. Like, what do those sort of spikes look like?
Before I answer that, I have to first say to the people listening, what is your goal? Like, is your goal becoming, like, when you use social media magic, are you trying to get more brand deals? Is that something you're trying to get into? Or are you trying to book in-person shows? Here's the thing. I've heard many people, clients who've told me, like, we've hired social media magicians before, like big magicians online that have a huge following, and they couldn't live up to the plate because guess what? All they do is spend all their time behind their cameras doing this, like re-recording the video over and over again. And trust me, I do the same thing because I don't want to flash. People are going to be watching the same thing. But then that means you don't have that experience performing in-person magic or working an actual in-person live show. So if that's your goal, like you want to use social media magic to get in-person bookings, be good. Have that experience for in-person shows. Like do anything you can to have that. In terms of just brand deals, then I guess you wouldn't necessarily need that. But to answer your question about the clientele, like, yeah, I would say that the TV appearances did help increase the exposure I had, even after it aired on TV, like year later, when virtual shows started becoming a thing. I was so worried. I'm like, my career just started. Like I'm half a year into this virtual shows. And it's so weird to say out loud that to this day, I've been doing virtual shows longer than I have live shows full time, full time. So I remember it was a couple months into the lockdown where this person reached out. He's like, hey, I'm from Google and I'm starting this new thing called Googlers at Home, where a lot of Google teams, both nationally and internationally, they can book artists. And I saw your fullest performance last year, and I just had this thought pop up, like, what if we can book you? And from that single event, it led to hundreds of shows at Google. Like, I believe I was the first magician to start doing these virtual shows. But again, it goes back to the idea, are you ready to step up to the plate? Once you have that recognition, once you have that 5 seconds of fame, can you live up to that that image that you built?
Yeah, and it's also, you know, like we talked about earlier, they are two totally different things, right? You know, doing magic in person, doing magic on social media, and doing magic virtually. Those are three completely different things. Like, they are just completely different things. Like, and yes, there's overlap in that they're both magic. Maybe you can do a card trick in both of them. Maybe you can, you know, there's overlap, but like they are more different. You know, they're incredibly different from each other. And it sounds like these things sort of build slowly. You know, you get a TV appearance here, you get a big social media thing here. It just feels like, you know, someone once said, like, no one spot makes it a difference. Like, it's all of them, right? It's like no one thing is like, that was it. It's kind of the jumble of all of these things happening and stacking on each other, you know, that makes it all happen. Would you agree with that, or no? Do you think there was one or two things that really made it happen for you?
No, I totally agree with that. Like, even with all the viral views, whatever, like, things build up slowly. And I think that's a good thing, because sometimes if things move too fast and you're not ready, it'll actually screw you over more than helping you.
Yeah, you have to be ready for the opportunities that you get, you know?
Yeah, always.
Two or three other things before we wrap. So the first is, you know, you've done a bunch of like red carpet events, you know, events for celebrities or things like that. They're awesome looking things. How do you go about finding that? Is it, again, just like random situation, or are you reaching out to red carpet events? You know, are you trying to get in contact with those people? Like, how is that going down?
So here in LA, I'm a part of like the Asian American community, a lot of cultural events. They do have a lot of screenings that they try to market as best as they can. And I've done a lot of complimentary shows for them, because I want to represent in this community. So this is like a niche thing, but I try to also utilize it in a way where if they do have these events and they're thinking of me, then that works out in terms of marketing. So I think in a way I'm kind of lucky because I have access to that. I just kind of met a lot of people. Every person I meet, I perform for, even though I don't always want to be quote unquote on. I understand that, hey, if you're nice enough and you show off what you do, sometimes it can lead to something down the line. Like, you'll just plant that seed and they'll be like, hey, we have this thing. Who can we ask? Kevin, because I met him. He was a nice person and he was actually pretty talented. So,
you know, the other thing I want to highlight, and it's only because I know you know this, you know, because you're in the mastermind, and it's something that I drill so much, is like niche and unfair advantage. And even in just that sentence, it's so interesting and revealing that you're like, LA, lots of movies, Asian American community, so I'm a part of it. And I'm just sitting here going like, yes, like that's how we do it. Like that, you know, like, you know, my first gigs were Jewish summer camps. Why? Well, because I went to Jewish summer camps, like, duh, right? Like, obviously that, and those led to huge summer camps. We'd be going to places all over the world, you know, like, so I love that. That gives me so much excitement to know that it's not, you know, you met this producer out, you know, at this event, but it's you leaned into your community, you leaned into, you know, the things that were around you, and it's slowly built. The last thing I want to ask, because I know this is sort of a big deal, it's coming up soon, is you have a sort of magic supper club thing that is launching in LA very soon, and it's very exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Is it a secret? What's going on?
For those of you who aren't aware of supper clubs, it's basically like a 9 to 15 course dinner. It's usually fine dining, so you get served a variety of dishes from like premium steak to fish to dessert, tapas, all of that. And I went through my girlfriend to one of these supper club events, and the chef there, named Chef Jasper, I really connected with him, and I told him I've never experienced anything like this. I'm actually quite overwhelmed with everything. We're so full. It was like an open bar with incredible cocktails. We need to do something. Like I don't know what it is yet. Like obviously like mixing magic and food, but the way we go about it, let's just discuss it. So I just immediately hit him up the next week and I said, let's discuss how we're going to make this collaboration happen. And we figured it out 1 month later. Here I am. We're about to launch in 2 weeks, our first time. So I know I'm going to learn a lot from the first performance, but my whole thing is I love taking risks and chances and experimenting with new things outside of magic, combining it with what I do. And I think that's always going to benefit you. Because if we're now talking about social media magic, what I was saying earlier about going to other pages on social media that aren't magic, you can get so much more inspiration most of the time than just being on a magic page because your perspective expands. You're like, oh my God, I can apply this concept to that idea. And the same thing with this whole supper club experience. So I wish I can get into more detail about exactly everything we're doing, but we haven't done it yet.
Can you tell us sort of what the name is or where people can go find out a little more about it?
Yeah, it's called Rosalind Magic Club. So Rosalind Magic Club. Normally they're called Rosalind Supper Club. So you can see the innovation we added to that name. And it's going to be a 3.5 to 4 hour course fine dining experience with my magic incorporated. But it's not just going to be like random magic, like, hey, we're going to throw this, throw that in. It's going to have to do with the food here and there. But it's also going to leave space for me to also share my creativity. So it'll be a nice melting of minds in both cooking and magic.
That is very, very exciting. There's one thing you said in there that I want to highlight as a nice way to sort of look back on this conversation, which is, you said that you like taking on these experiments, trying these things. And I was having a conversation with someone the other day and they said, like, how do you make it as a magician? Like what is it? And I said, the answer for me is projects. The answer is just like projects. Like I say yes to trying out different projects. Sure, I'm going to produce this show, try to sell tickets. Sure, for me, it was start a podcast, Sure, I'm going to like rent out this theater. Sure, I'm going to email 150 camps and see what they say. Sure, I'm going to try Google ads and see what happens. Like you just take on projects and eventually the world tells you what projects you need to take on. Like when enough people say to you like, you don't have a website? And you're like, oh, okay, I really need to make this. This is another project that I need. But it's just a reminder that like, there is not one direction to, okay, go and you have to get gigs or go and you have to do this. The idea is magic is this weird amorphous thing that can be good for social media, but also in person, also shows and also close-up settings and also, everything. And to keep your eyes and ears open for different projects and different things that you can do. And that could be auditioning for the Magic Castle or auditioning for Fool Us or pairing with someone that you've never worked with or building a trick and trying to email Shin Lim and get him to take or whatever, right? Like just take on projects. That's so exciting. Such a good piece of advice to leave us with, especially and a good taste in our mouth as we think about the LA Supper Club. Okay, before we wrap, we have a couple of wrap-up questions that we do with each and every guest. The first is the endless chain. So in order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be great for the show. There's 2 catches. The first catch is that we cannot have had them on the show already. And the second catch is you have to be able to put us in contact. You can't just be like David Copperfield. So who do you think would be a great guest for this show?
I'm going to recommend my good friend and consultant, Mickey Wong. Mickey is an incredible magician based out of Hong Kong, and he's done a lot of consulting work, TV work, and he's helped me with both my magic and script writing. So he is just well-rounded in everything magic-wise, and I think he'd be a great person to chat with.
Incredible recommendation. Mickey Wong, thank you for that. The next question is about modern magic. A lot has changed. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. It's funny, you've done more virtual shows than in-person shows in your magic career. It's so bonkers. Thinking about modern magic, everything that's going on right now, in-person shows, virtual shows, social media, everything. What's one thing that you like about modern magic and one thing that you don't like?
One thing I do like about modern magic is you're able to experiment more, and it's not going to be too daunting to try out new things. I feel like the creativity there, people are more accepting of all kinds of ideas. Like, people are actually looking for new ideas all the time. They don't want to see the same shit over and over again. So that is actually that should make you more confident about trying new things.
And what's something you don't like?
One thing I don't like is carbon copies of social media magicians and people saying, "Oh, but it's just a TikTok trend." Like, bro, like, everyone copies trends. No, in magic, it's not the same. Like, don't be a carbon copy of one another. If you take one thing from this entire podcast interview, please be original. Like, dive into who you are and take inspiration from.
Seek inspiration outside of magic. Like that to me was such a great piece. And it's funny, I'm about to ask, the take home point, which is the one piece from the episode that people are going to think back to remember. And for me, it's get inspiration outside of magic. It's such an obvious solution as to how to, because creativity doesn't come from thin air. Ideas don't just appear. Like, they come from things. You get inspired. And if you inspire yourself from just magic, then you end up doing what other people did. If you inspire yourself from outside of magic, then you can steal like an artist, and there's not a bunch of people frowning on you, right? Oh, and get that book. For you, what was the take home point? What's the most important thing for people thinking back to this episode?
Again, going back to being original, but also don't forget to have fun in that process, because sometimes when you're so hooked on a specific idea or method and you visit it too long, you can start hating it. I think that's a normal thing. That's a normal thing. So
the last question is plugs. Where can people find you? Where can they find your magic? Where can they find the Supper Club?
I post a lot on Instagram. That is my main page for social media magic, at Kevin Lee Magic. Lee is Li. I post a lot of YouTube shorts, TikToks, and the Supper Club. If you're interested, that's going to be Roslyn Magic Club. So excited for that, and thank you, Jonah, for having me. I really enjoyed this interview.
Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As always, if this was cool or special, then tell a friend. Spread the word. That's the only way that other people find out about this thing. So thank you for doing your part in spreading the word. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next Thursday. Peace.